things like emotions or character traits like kindness or patience, when you boil it down to what it actually is, it's actually a bunch of skills. So like being patient is just figuring out what you need to do while you're waiting. Or like being polite is just, letting people finish and not interrupting them. It's holding the door for people. It's saying please and thank you. And so what we can do for our kids is just teach them those skills. If they have a really hard time being patient, just say, okay, when you're standing in line, waiting for your turn at baseball practice, what should we do? Let's think about it. Should we watch the kid that's going right now? Should we watch the coach? And so having the conversations very low level about what exactly should we do in these exact situations. And I think a lot of parents just say, don't do that, or that was bad, or they say don't be that way, don't be lazy, don't be impatient, don't goof around, but they don't say what they should do. And so saying what they should do and not just what they shouldn't do is super helpful.
Luke, welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. Before we dive into who you are and what you're all about, what is the number one problem that you see parents making, especially when it comes to discipline?
Yeah, huge problem I see all the time is that parents just they make too many assumptions. They jump so often right to the conclusion that kids are the problem is motivation, and they assume the solution to the problem they assumed, and it's that they need more motivation, right? So they say, all right, I know why you misbehaved, and I know how to fix that without really gathering any information whatsoever. And so they jump straight to punishing, to taking away privileges, to giving consequences, to bribing, to shaming sometimes. You're such a bad boy. Whatever it is. And so yeah, it's a huge problem I see all the time is assuming the problem and then taking it one step further and assuming they know the solution too.
It's good. Yeah, that's definitely something I've learned along the way of ask a lot of questions. So we'll dive further into that. But parents, this is going to be a really good one for both moms and dads to listen to this one. Luke is a parenting coach. He writes about it all the time. He shares a lot of wisdom. So Luke, why don't you formally introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about everything you're doing, and we'll just go from there, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, my name is Luke Adsit. I'm on Twitter. I write all the time about parenting, specifically peaceful parenting. And just for those of you who are not familiar with peaceful parenting, basically it's this philosophy that is really trying its best to give children treat them with the respect that they deserve. Just because they're smaller and their brains aren't fully developed, peaceful parents believe that that's not enough of a reason to take away kind of basic human dignity and privileges and respect. And so just because as adults, just because we're bigger, stronger, and we have fully formed brains, we're not going to use those advantages to kind of force our kids to obey or to do what we want. And so yeah, it peaceful parenting understands that kids have limited capabilities. Their brains are very, very underdeveloped, especially, in toddlerhood and stuff. And so we're not going to take misbehavior personally. We're going to understand that kids are going to make a lot of mistakes. And it's really based on compassion and understanding and working with kids and understanding that when they're having a hard time, it's almost never personal. It's not some kind of affront. They're not trying to affront our authority or disrespect us. It's almost always they're just having a hard time. They have a goal in their mind they're trying to get to, and they just don't know the best path to get there. And so they kind of try to cut some corners that they don't understand is wrong yet, or maybe they know it's wrong, but they just don't know the right way to handle it. And so that's kind of a summary of peaceful parenting. And what I do is so basically my background, where I'm coming from, is ever since finding out I was going to be a dad, I was just like, oh man, I just need to just devour parenting books. And so I read all the books, I listened to all the podcasts. It's probably been thousands of hours of just taking in these resources. And in part because I don't know, I had my thoughts about parenting challenged before I was a parent. And parenting was a big topic that I talked about with my wife before we got married, because I wanted to be aligned on parenting. I didn't want there to be a mismatch where, you know, if one of us like is gung ho about spanking, and and I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to be spanking. That's just not gonna work out well, right? So I was even into parenting before I was even married. And in part, it was because I was listening to some podcasts that it's kind of a actually libertarian kind of frame of mind. They were talking about the non-aggression principle, and we don't have to like get into politics or anything, but it's this idea that you shouldn't initiate aggression. You know, aggression should pretty much always be used only in self-defense, and that resonated with me a lot. It just made common sense, really. And so they took that kind of libertarian idea, this podcast that I listened to, and he was saying this actually should be universal and it should apply in all areas of life, including parenting. And so if you're initiating aggression against your children, that's going to cause a lot of problems. And it just, at the end of the day, it's just not okay, right? And so peaceful parenting is all about not using force when you don't have to. It's about treating your kids with respect. And so what I do is I help parents who may have used force, used punishments, or raised their voice, or they're just, for whatever reason, they can't figure out why their kids are misbehaving. Their kids are just having a tough time. Maybe they're throwing tons of tantrums. Maybe they're hitting. Maybe they're biting, or whatever it is. Misbehaving, disrespecting, talking back. And I help parents kind of from the peaceful parenting perspective. I just show them, okay, so, through talking with you, I've identified like these things that are causing problems. And I just give them some really practical, really tactical tools they can use and take with them. And everyone gets that imposter syndrome, but every time it's just like it feels so good for them to say, oh my gosh, wow, this is so useful, thank you so much. And I think oftentimes it just takes that third person perspective. It just takes that outside opinion, and it just works really well. So yeah, I'm a parenting coach. I help people with their kids who, when they can't figure out why they are misbehaving. So that's a little bit about what I do.
I love that, man. So, you had mentioned when you first became a dad, you were studying hard on a lot of things because you were challenged beforehand. But what was the overwhelming feeling that kind of sparked the journey that shifted your perspective on life in general when you first became a dad? Because we all kind of have that moment where we're like, I got to start stepping up. Like this has to change, right? So what was that moment or that overwhelming feeling for you that started that?
Yeah, I mean, so I was raised in a punitive household. It wasn't like over the top authoritarian or anything, but there was spanking, there was punishments, there was consequences, there was raised voices. And so I was just thinking, man, if like this isn't the path I want to take, I just don't know what to do. Like I can't go to my parents and ask them because I don't really agree with everything they did, and their fundamental philosophy I differ. And so I was just like, crap. What do I do? That was kind of the feeling, like, oh man, I need to study because I have no idea what I'm doing. And I don't want to just wing it. I don't want to just like follow my gut, because my gut, I probably have all this baggage and, I don't know, little t trauma that's like I'll just catch up on. So I just need to know what to do. And that's kind of where I was coming from with that. Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that feeling of my household growing up was very intense, just across the board. Like we walked on eggshells about everything. So punishments were also pretty intense as well. Yeah, I definitely got like spanked pretty hard a lot and things like that, thumped on the head, all that kind of, what I mean? So, yeah. And then my parents divorced too. So, I was like really, really, really kind of the same way of like, I want to be a really good dad. I knew it way before I ever was even married or even close to being married. I was like, I want I want to do that really well, and definitely didn't listen to. Podcasts weren't really as big of a thing back then. I don't know how much older I am than you, but I read a bunch of books for sure. But even then, it's. I agree with you that outside perspective is so powerful because it's contextualized to your life, and a coach is great because they're not in the midst of like the turmoil of the situation, so they can really just extract what's actually going on and kind of cut through the noise. So it would have been great to have someone like you in my corner when I was dealing with the newborn and everything. But I think that principle is very, very wise because it makes me think of kind of the expression in the military of like, if you ever have to remind someone of your rank, you clearly don't have their respect. And so it's almost like as a parent, if you're using punitive measures, not discipline, right? Which I'd love to kind of explain the two in a second, but using that method is essentially like, I have the authority and there's nothing you can do about it. And so it is very tyrannical. It is very kind of like, I'm having to remind my child of my rank, and it's kind of like, it starts to break down upon itself pretty quickly. So I do love that kind of core tenet being the driving force behind how to, disciple your children. So yeah, wherever you want to go from here, but yeah, it just really can relate to kind of that upbringing and that need to want to get it right on the front end, So I guess the question here is, how long did it take you to kind of feel like you had started to master this? Or was it you kind of got it right from the get-go because of how much you had studied? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah. No, I mean, and I love what you were saying about the having to pull rank. It's such a good point. Like, if you have to use force, or if you have to like use some kind of manipulation or something, it's really an admission that you don't have a good reason for why someone should do something, so I'm just going to force you to do it, right? Yeah, I mean, one of the first books I read was about how to instead of just punishing, how to kind of have a conversation with your kids, and how to kind of ask them the right kinds of questions, kind of gather information, how to explain to them why you have concerns, and to kind of meet somewhere where you're both happy, right? And I'm like, oh, that's great. I'll just have these like negotiations with my kid, and then I have a toddler, right? And it's like, this isn't happening, right? So at a certain point, I was just like, okay. I mean, I'm reading books the whole time, but you realize like, yeah, I can't just negotiate and have these like complex conversations with a 1 year old or 1.5 year old. And so, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like each book has its own like nuggets, and you kind of, slowly pick things up. But yeah, I mean, generally, one of the things about peaceful parenting is that when you don't have force or spanking or punishments in your back pocket, if it's not even an option, not even as a last resort, it really forces you to get creative. Like if you don't have an option, you have to figure something out. And so all the time, I hear stories about other parents that get really creative, and it's just inspiring. Like, if the kid really just doesn't want to change his diaper right now, and, some, 1.5 year old, and he's just losing his mind, it's okay to just sit back and say, hey, if you're not ready yet, that's okay. We can wait a couple minutes. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world if we don't change your diaper this second. It's actually just not an emergency, and I don't have to make it one. And so, and you can, you can offer options. You can say, all right, do you want to change your diaper on the table, or do you want to do it on the floor? Do you want to do it laying down? Do you want to do it standing up? We can give them a sense of control, a sense of like, okay, my opinion is being heard, my voice is being heard. And because people hate being forced, even kids, no one likes to feel like they have zero control and they're just some kind of prisoner being pushed around or something. Like, so giving kids a sense of control can just help them just feel more in control, right?
Yeah. We interrupt this episode to talk about Synthesis Tutor, the world's first superhuman math tutor. It is warm, patient, and understanding, and adapts to your child so you never have to worry about them falling behind when it comes to math. In episode 84, we spoke to Chrisman Frank, the CEO of Synthesis, and immediately afterwards, I purchased Synthesis Tutor for my daughter, and it has been an absolute game changer for us. Math used to be a very painful experience. It was frustrating, and there was lots of tears for my daughter when it came to learning math. It's something she's not naturally good at, and we struggled a lot. Now she happily uses Synthesis Tutor every single week, and there's no more frustrating nights. The way it works is that it leverages AI to adapt the experience to your child to not simply master memorization of math facts, but it actually teaches the principles and concepts so that your child can independently solve problems without needing tons of outside help. Because it tailors the experience to your child, it is always adapting and learning where the child is in terms of their development, and it keeps them in the proximal zone of learning so that your child is being challenged but not getting frustrated or defeated by the experience. I am very pleased with our experience on Synthesis Tutor. My daughter's grades have improved in math. It's something that I can now outsource. I don't have to take the time myself to sit there and try and memorize facts with her. She gets excited to do it, and it's fun and engaging for her to learn instead of this frustrating experience, and it doesn't feel like a chore any longer. So we at the Present Fathers podcast highly endorse Synthesis Tutor. There is also a Teams function for those with multiple kids or maybe multiple families want to pool their children together. You can check that out on the website. You can get 10% off with your purchase by going to synthesis.com/PFP. That's synthesis.com/PFP. Go there, check it out, and start supercharging your child's learning experience with the power of AI. Back to the episode.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But just to kind of play devil's advocate, or maybe clarify here, because it kind of sounds, and this is where this came into being of, like, well, just ask your children what they want to do. Just like let them do whatever they want. Let them decide. And I'm pretty certain that's not what you're suggesting, but can you clearly, show how that's also just as destructive as being the tyrant, and where peaceful parenting is really more of this kind of in the middle kind of approach there?
Sure. Yeah. So there's two kind of extremes. There's the kind of authoritarian kind of, my way or the highway. I don't care what you think. We're doing it this way. Or, some people will say children are to be seen but not heard, right? Or, there's some people that say children need to obey immediately, all the way and with a smile on their face or something. And there's like no room for even a hesitation to like think about the words you said. And so there's that kind of authoritarian extreme. And then on the other extreme, there's like, do whatever you want. Some people call it free range parenting. I call it neglect, honestly.
Yeah,
it's just kids, they need guidance. They don't need to reinvent the wheel for every single aspect of their life. They need someone that is going to be giving them some pointers, right? And so, that kind of goes back to, like you mentioned earlier, like what is discipline, and how should we define it? Because I think a lot of people kind of just assume, maybe this is an American thing, I don't know, or a Southern thing maybe, but like discipline just is 100% exactly the same thing as punishment in a lot of people's minds. Discipline equals punishment. And I don't think that's biblical at all. That's just not what the word means. I mean, the word comes from the word disciple, right? So anything, at least in the Bible uses the same word to refer to correction, teaching. Sometimes it's a more stern, more physical, corporal punishment. Sometimes it's just saying, hey, that's not the way we do things, right? So really just any kind of instruction whatsoever. And so, yes, children need instruction. They need to be corrected when they're doing something that's not okay. So, of course, I'm certainly no proponent of just do whatever you want, kid. I really don't care. Go ahead, eat all the ice cream in the world. I don't care. Like, there are lines where I'm going to say this is not safe, and I'm going to make sure you don't hurt yourself, right? So, for example, if the kid's about to jump off something or run into the street or hit his sibling, I'm gonna pick him up and I'm gonna say, hey, not gonna let you do that, buddy. Not gonna let you hurt yourself. Not gonna let you hurt your sister, whatever it is, and I'll stop him. Or the other thing is like, okay, so the kid says, I want to eat ice cream right now. Instead of more hands off, more free range, or even neglectful parent might just be like, yeah, whatever, eat ice cream. A peaceful, the authoritarian might say, shut up, I don't care, or maybe in nicer words, maybe not, or sit in the sit in the chair right now at the dinner table. We're eating, and put this fork in your mouth right now. But the peaceful parent says, hey, I see that you really want ice cream. Yeah, man, ice cream is great. Wouldn't it be great if we could just eat ice cream all the time? There's a problem though, but the problem is if we eat ice cream right before dinner, there's not going to be room in our stomach for nutritious food, right? So if you want to get big and strong, if you want to grow your muscles, if you want to grow up to be an adult one day, you got to eat your meat and potatoes and veggies, right? And so it's not just do it I say because I say so, but I'm going to give them an explanation. I'm going to show them I understand. I'm not just like some uncaring, unfeeling, a dictator or something.
Yeah.
But I'm showing them by telling them I know where they're coming from, and I'm also explaining why. And then still, I wouldn't force my kid to like come sit at the table or something. If he's like 100%, I'm not going to sit at the table. I'm not going to sit there and like force him because I don't think it's an emergency. It's not a matter of safety or something. So I'll say, hey, we'd really love for you to join us. Um, if you don't want to, that's okay. But we would, I'm not going to like guilt trip him or something. But yeah, we're having dinner. Why don't you come join us? We'd love to have you. We'd love to hang out with you. We'd love to ask you about your day. If you don't want to, that's okay. We'll be a little sad, but you know, that's how it is. So yeah, I'm not just going to let him eat ice cream. I'm not going to like force him and shove food down his throat. But I'm going to explain kind of where I'm coming from, explain my concerns, and say, no, I'm not going to let you eat ice cream right now. So that's a little bit about the peaceful parenting approach.
I love that. I think a lot of dads, the things that they struggle with and the reason why they go so quickly straight to punishment instead of through actual discipleship is that they're missing the toolkit because their parents were either very authoritative, very neglectful, or permissive, right? There's not any balance in that. So outside of, obviously we know that connection is one of the biggest factors in respect and our children listening to us. Outside of connection, what other toolkits do you think that fathers should outfit themselves with in order to properly disciple their children?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. One thing you said about fathers just jumping straight to punishment is I think a lot of especially fathers, mothers too, though, they'll like tell their kid to do something, whatever it is, like, come over here, or, stop hitting, or, sit down right there, or put your seatbelt on, like whatever it is. And if the kid hesitates, if they say no, if, whatever it is, if they don't immediately obey, they'll take that like personally. They'll take it as an affront to their authority. They'll take it as disrespect. Um, and really, I think that's kind of unwarranted. And so the first step, I think, is just realizing they're not like taking this calculated, uh, thought out decision about, I've thought about who you are and I've studied you and I've come to the conclusion that you are a bad human being and I want to disobey you and disrespect you and insult you in front of everyone. Like, kids aren't thinking that. They're just like, there's something in their head about why they don't want to put their seatbelt on, why they don't want to brush their teeth, right? And so just realizing, it's not about me. And if the kid's, going through something emotionally, he's not giving me a hard time as a parent. He's having a hard time, right?
Right.
And so I think that's an important thing to think about. So yeah, you asked about tools. Yeah, there's so many tools. It's hard to pick, but I mean, I mentioned kind of the information gathering thing. So there's fundamentally, well, first there's fundamental. I kind of think about kids in two ways. There's either they're old enough to have kind of a complex conversation, or they're simply not there yet. And so if they're not there yet, as much as possible, I want to make undesirable outcomes, or dangerous situations. I just want to make it impossible. If they
Yep.
can't understand why they shouldn't do it, I just don't want them to even have that option. Like if I don't want my kid running out the door into the street, I'm just gonna put a lock where he can't reach it, or some kind of child proofing. Or if I don't want him running out of the backyard into the road, I'm just gonna put a fence up. Right? I'm just gonna make it impossible. So that's the first. The first thing is just preventing the terrible thing from happening in the first place.
So boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And just kind of physical, you could even call it baby proofing, right? Or
Yep.
toddler proofing, whatever. And then if they are old enough to kind of have more complex conversations, the tool would just be, um, so first of all, not talking about things in the heat of the moment is huge. Um, if like if you're somehow angry, upset, your patience is running low, you're exhausted, you're tired, it's going to be really hard for you to administer the instruction and correction you need to in a sense of just grace and humility and calmness and gentleness. Um,
So that would be
and
emotional regulation, right?
yeah, for sure, absolutely. Just choosing to just wait, to just decide that this actually isn't something my child needs to learn this second, and it can wait a few hours or maybe until like tomorrow morning or something, right? And so just realizing things, even though they feel like emergencies, they can almost always wait, right? It's not a matter of safety that he learns this random lesson about whatever right now.
Yeah.
So yeah. So first of all, I'd say, taking it out of the heat of the moment, and then not assuming that they have bad intentions, not assuming that they were rude or that they were the bad guy somehow, and just say, "Hey, I've noticed this pattern. I've noticed that you haven't liked brushing your teeth or whatever it is. Can you tell me what's up?" And I specifically don't say the word why because that really makes people feel defensive. It's just kind of a universal experience, I think. Why did you do that? It's just you're not going to get any useful information. So, hey, can you tell me what's going on here? And just listen. If they're young, sometimes you have to kind of play the guessing game. Is it that you don't like the flavor of the toothpaste? Is it that you're in the middle of something and you didn't want to stop to start brushing your teeth? Is it that you don't like this new toothbrush you got and you like the old one? Like, is it that you know that it's going to be bedtime soon and you don't want to go to bed? You want to stay up because it's fun to be awake with the rest of the family, right? So you can play the guessing game if you have to, but if they're older, it's good to kind of leave it open ended. Kind of let them just say whatever is actually going on, because a lot of the time you don't know 100% of the story, and you just can't solve any problem that you don't understand, right? You do need to understand where they're coming from in order
Definitely.
to find a solution. And so whatever they say, you kind of work from there. And so then you tell them after you feel like you understand their perspective. Next step is explaining your concerns as the parent. So you say, okay, I hear that you hate this flavor of toothpaste, but here's the thing. If you keep not brushing your teeth are going to turn yellow. You're going to have really bad breath. No one's going to want to hang out with you because you have bad breath. It's just going to be yucky for anyone that's standing anywhere near you. And you're going to get cavities. It's going to hurt really bad. And you're going to have to go to the dentist and they're going to have to drill your teeth for a long time. And it's just going to be unpleasant. And so that's why it's really important to brush your teeth. Okay, so next step, how do we find a solution that makes you end up not having stinky breath and cavities, and you still don't have to have, whatever problem they mentioned. You still don't have to deal with this, disgusting toothpaste, or, this is a trivial problem, but, obviously you can just switch the toothpaste, but, you talk it out with them and say, okay, what do we think about this solution? And if they're older, you can say, well, what do you think would be a decent solution? Kind of help them start practicing solving problems on their own. And so that's a little bit of a framework for how to solve problems without punishments, right? Instead of saying, brush your teeth or else you don't get to watch TV tomorrow, you can just say, hey, let's actually figure out why you don't want to brush your teeth in the first place.
Right. I want to go back to the dinner table kind of scenario we talked about earlier, where well, we'd like you to come sit at the table, but you don't have to. I think maybe there's a boundary on kind of this approach where I'll just use a different example actually to kind of highlight where I'm going with this, and then maybe we can come back to the theoretical one here of the kid not wanting to go to the table. But I believe as a father, there's certain things where you just need to kind of pull them with you, pull the family with you to do the thing that needs to happen. And so, for example, very often, actually happened today, my wife was like, Raylan, you want to go for a walk with us? And she's asking her if she wants to go. And it's like, no, the sun's out. It's been rainy and stormy. Like, we're going on a walk, you know? And so I'm like, no, come on, you're coming down. We're going on a walk, right? Because she said no. She said, no, I don't want to go. And I said, no, come down. We're going on a walk together. And it's like, we're going to go do this thing as a family, you know, because actually I've been on calls all night. So, like, that was the only chance we were going to spend together today. So there's a little bit of that where I'm not going to ask permission, right? I think you do need to use your authority for positive outcomes for everyone. Like, my daughter didn't complain, actually. She got on her bike and she was super pumped that we were outside and she played at the playground, and right. But she's thinking in her child brain of, no, I just want to stay in my room where I'm at comfortably right now. So, you know, back to like the dinner table thing, I know many dads are real big about like, hey, our time at the table together as a family is really important. So, you know, like, where do you draw the line in terms of, well, I want to be a peaceful parent, but I at least George thinks there are certainly times where I know best. And so even though you're going to complain in the moment, you're actually going to be grateful in the, you know, after the moment. And that's called leadership. So, you know, maybe I'm not understanding fully, but it kind of seems like maybe we disagree on this. So I'd love for you to kind of explain.
Yeah. So I mean, if it's a recurring problem, I think that's a little bit of a different story. So like if every single day the kid is saying, "No, I don't want to go on a walk with you. No, I don't want to sit at the dinner table." I think it could be really helpful to kind of figure out like what's going on here. Like, is there something I don't understand about why you don't want to eat with us? Why you don't want to go on a walk with us? Maybe there's a perfectly legitimate reason. You know, maybe there's just something that's just not clicking with the kid. You know, I don't know, maybe like the chair is like stabs them in like the back or something. Like I don't know, like maybe there's some like thing it's like, "Oh, I would totally feel the same way if I was in that position," you know. Maybe their sibling always like stabs them with a fork or something. Like I don't know. I'm coming up with violent ideas, but like
Yeah.
there could be a perfectly legitimate reason why they don't want to go. And so if it's a recurring like pattern, I'd want to, you know, outside of the heat of the moment, I would want to say, I've noticed you don't want to sit with us at the dinner table. Like, can you tell me like what's going on here? Kind of go through that framework I was talking about instead of just saying like, you know, yeah, I don't really like, I don't want to present it unfairly, but like, you
Yeah.
know, I don't care what you think. You know, you have to come right now. Um, I kind of tend to err on the side of if somehow I don't know. My mantra is kind of prevention. You know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And so if I know there's going to be some kind of challenging thing for my kid, and I can anticipate it, I like to prepare my kid for that challenge ahead of time. And
Sure.
so that might mean talking through it, talking about like, all right, so when this challenge comes, what are we going to do? You know, are you going to do it this way? Are we going to do it that way? And if it's a big enough deal, kind of getting their agreement on it and saying like, okay, we can go to the birthday party as long as like you agree we're not going to eat like 5 pieces of cake or you know whatever your concerns are, right?
I need to like add one thing too. Like, I didn't
Sure.
just, so I do believe, and this is actually a military thing, but this is just genius for all forms of leadership. Never just give task and purpose. We are going to do this so that this, and this, right? So with the walk example, no, we're going for a walk together so we can spend time together as a family and the sun is shining, right? Like, it's task and purpose. So it's not just pure direction. But, you know, I just believe that as a father, I mean, your wife even needs this direction a lot of the time, right? As a husband, where, no, we're going to go do this thing. It's good for all of us. Like, I understand you have hesitation or whatever, but even simple things can somehow be like these sticking points, but it's absolutely the right call for the family to like get out of the house and go do a thing together and like break the cycle of whatever funk you may be in. So, you know, I think that's part of kind of the protector and vision role that we play as men. So, you know, I guess maybe it's a little bit of, maybe we're kind of talking two different points here. I kind of disagree with the whole like, oh, well, if you don't want to sit at the table, that's fine. You know, yes, I'm obviously going to problem solve if there's actually like this chronic thing going on. But I've found very often that I think children are just very like temporally focused on whatever thing is right in front of them. And this is where it's like, it's a family value issue here, right? Like, no, we spend time together doing this activity. It's a non-negotiable. You can complain about it, but like, you're a part of this family. You know what I mean? So it's not, I'm not like authoritarian with it, but I do believe there should be some pretty strong, non-negotiables across the table. It sounds like maybe you think that,
There,
but maybe we're talking past
so
each other. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding fully.
there's really good things here though, okay, and from both sides of you guys. So what Luke is trying to do is, I understand exactly what it is. He's putting his finger on the pulse, so that he understands why the kid is behaviors are happening and intent and things. But there's also a balance there of picking and choosing your battles, right? And then instead of asking, telling, right? So there are power dynamics, and obviously it is situational. So it's going to be dependent on the situation, but I do see both sides of that, and I agree with both sides to certain extents, right? So it's great to have these healthy differences in fatherhood. I love seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of wrap up what I was trying to say, and it's yeah, no, what you're saying about the finger on the pulse is, yeah, that is a good way to summarize what I was saying. I guess so. You're saying picking your battles, right? And so I would say I tend to try to pick as few battles as I can, and just the power struggle. I'm kind of making you do something is kind of setting a precedent that I don't want them to emulate, right? So if I'm going to use my physical force to kind of make my kid do something, then they're going to use the tools at their disposal later on if they're following my example. And so that might be, throwing a tantrum, that might be screaming or refusing to eat or throwing or biting. And so I don't want my kids to kind of respond in the same way. And so, as much as I possibly can, I tend to err on the side of, if it's not an emergency, I'm just not going to force them. And so there are ways I can make it so that I'm just setting them up for success. That's how I think about it. Like I was saying, anticipating the challenges. So maybe if my child has a hard time yanking themselves out of an activity and just going on a walk, maybe I'll, tell them earlier in the day, hey, we're gonna take a walk at 4 p.m. today. Love it if you could join us. Or after nap time, we're gonna go on a walk. Or when I'm done with my meeting, I'm gonna come out and we're gonna go on a walk. I'd love for you to come with us. And so there are ways we can set her up for success, and before just kind of pulling this like force card kind of out of nowhere. And so that's kind of where I would go if I could anticipate that my kid might not want to go, and just make it as easy and make her want to come, right? So hey, we could you could ride your bike, you could ride your scooter. What is it that I know she would enjoy? Or we're gonna go walk by this one house that she likes to look at, or we're gonna take the dog with us and she can hold the leash, or like whatever it is. So yeah, I like to make it as easy as possible, set the kid up for success, really anticipate what is the resistance point. Is it that she needs to like wrap up whatever she was doing? Is it that she just needs some warning? Like, what is it that I can do to make and it is kind of like a trivial example, but like, a lot of parents, like the kid doesn't want to get in the car and put their seatbelt on. And so obviously you have to go, and the kid needs to wear their seatbelt. So it's like a non-negotiable. The kid's resisting, like, what do you do? Right. And so it's like, yeah. So anticipating, having the conversation ahead of time, and it can even be helpful to just build extra time into your schedule, into your calendar, so that they can kind of warm up to the idea for just a minute or two if they need to, and just instead of just saying, I don't care, forcing you in the seat, forcing your arm through, I don't care for screaming and crying, just like pausing just a second, giving them just a second to kind of adjust to the idea. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from, trying to pick less battles and trying to just make it as easy as possible for the kids to do what they need to do.
Gotcha. Brandon, you had a question, right?
Yeah, so clearly your priority is to keep and to bring peace into your home. So during like conflict or stress, what's a practical tip that dads can steal from you to help create that peace? Because we have the framework, right? But like, what's something specific like that guys can do to kind of create that peace, especially in conflict or stress?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So yeah, I mentioned this earlier, so I won't beat this horse too much, but realizing that most issues aren't emergencies, right? And so not thinking you need to immediately teach this lesson right now. We don't need to force it. We don't need to force the lesson. And so, yeah, if it's a matter of safety, obviously remove the kid right away. But one thing that I learned recently that I just found super interesting is that if you are stressed, if you are having any kind of adrenaline going in your blood or cortisol, they've done experiments, and and I can get into the cool experiments if you want, but for reasons we might not need to get into, people will literally be stressed just because you are stressed. Even if you say nothing, even if you show nothing, just like the pheromones are just enough to make
Yeah,
make kids get stressed if
93%,
you're stressed.
93% of human communication is not with words. So yeah, your
Exactly.
presence, your energy absolutely influences positively or negative.
Absolutely. And so yeah, just choosing to uh to take 3 seconds to just pause, take a deep breath if you need to, just choosing to be the adult, just choosing to calm down, to consciously lower your heart rate or your stress or whatever it is. And even if you're exhausted, there's already one toddler perhaps throwing a tantrum. We don't need to like make the adult lower to the level of a toddler as well, right? And so yeah, you calming can often be a big factor in the kid calming down. Just and so that's just one thing to think about. And so yeah, pausing, realizing that it's not personal, that just because the
Yeah.
kid is upset and frustrated doesn't mean that it's a personal affront on you, on your character. And so just calming down and choosing to be the adult in the situation, and removing yourself if you need to. So I'm not a proponent of timeouts, kind of using, putting a kid in their room as some kind of like solitary confinement to punish them for something, to like think about what they've done. I'm but like if you put yourself in timeout, if you want to say it that way, could be something if you like desperately need it to just calm yourself down. Like I'm gonna remove myself from the situation as long as it's safe. That's something that might be helpful for some people. But yeah, it might be helpful if I have if you had a specific scenario in mind. But without that, that's a few of the thoughts that jump to mind.
Well, real quickly, the calm yourself down and stay stoic. That's good advice, not just for parenting men. That's also great advice as a husband. And in fact, that's what me and Brandon teach very heavily within Elite Sentinel. So Luke, that's kind of a 2-for-1 right there. Yes, as men, we should emotionally regulate because that's leadership influence, right? Your presence really can change a situation, can really diffuse a situation. And so in this parenting example, I can remember multiple times, and this goes both ways. I have been out of control at times when my wife has calmed me down. So it's not like George is perfect and my wife is, I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But there have been times where she's stressed, she's tired, then my daughter will do something, and it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I'm the one who comes in and is like, hey, we're good. We're calm. Like, honey, I got this. Let's go. Hey, kiddo, what's going on here? Like, and like you kind of just diffuse it with your stillness, right?
Hmm.
And there's no like condemnation to your wife or whatever. Like they've been dealing with this or that, and it just is, what I mean. But that's where that calm presence just completely smooths the waters for everyone. And yeah, that requires you to kind of slow down and not get defensive or reactive, and it's stoicism and it's an action, right? It's a good thing. Brandon, sorry, I kind of jumped in here. You were about to go too.
No, that was great. I mean, I agree completely. And, emotional mastery, once the dad gets it, right, and he's teaching it by example, the kid can learn it inherently by that. But my question to you from your parenting style and your philosophy is, outside of like example, how would you teach your kids the emotional mastery? Because it's one thing for the dad to learn that for himself, but it's another to teach it to your children, right? And each child's different, I understand, but just some general things that you think would be some good things.
Yeah, no, great question. So one thing that I got actually from Alex Hormozy, and I think he has a lot of wisdom, is that things like emotions or character traits like kindness or patience, when you boil it down to what it actually is, it's actually a bunch of skills. It's so like being patient is just figuring out what you need to do while you're waiting. It's not like being able to sit there and do nothing. It's like when something like time has to elapse before I can do something, I need to figure out what I do in the meantime. Like that's patience. Or like being polite is just, letting people finish and not interrupting them. It's holding the door for people. It's saying please and thank you. Like being polite is a group of actually really practical skills. And so what we can do for our kids is just teach them those skills. And so if they have a really hard time being patient, just say, okay, when you're standing in line, waiting for your turn at baseball practice, what should we do? Like, let's think about it. Should we watch the kid that's going right now? Should we watch the coach? Should we listen to something? Is it okay if we talk with our teammates? Is it okay if we goof around? Maybe not, like maybe sometimes. And so having the conversations very like low level about what exactly should we do in these exact situations, and I think a lot of parents just say don't do that, or that was bad, or they say don't be that way, don't be lazy, don't be impatient, don't goof around, but they don't say what they should do. And so saying what they should do and not just what they shouldn't do is super helpful. Another thing, especially for younger kids, is just it's a tool I call I stole it from some book. I forget what book, but it's called Name It to Tame It. You just name their emotion. You say, I see that you're really upset right now because I said you couldn't have any ice cream, right? And just saying, I see that you're really mad at me because XYZ, because I said it's time to go. And you just help them build that vocabulary of emotion. And so eventually, after you do that a few times, they'll just be able to say, Dad, I'm mad. It's like, okay, great. Now we can talk about that. Like, it's perfectly fine for someone to tell you they're mad. Like, it's actually really helpful information. And you say, okay, I hear you. You're mad. Like, what's going on, bud? Like, what are you mad about? Like, let's talk about it. And there's of course good reasons to be mad. And so, yeah, name it to tame it, giving them really practical things they can do, and yeah, not solving things in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are all really good. The name it to tame it one too. There's another 2 for 1. That's also really effective. Like when you notice your wife is in distress, of not talking to her like a child. So just everyone chill for a second. But if she's in the midst of feeling overwhelmed or whatever, right? And then you just ask her a question of like, well, what's wrong? Well, now she has to make more decisions to help communicate to you. Instead, you can kind of guess a little bit of like, are you stressed, anxious, or lonely, right? Give her options, and then it's a lot less intense, to work with her on the situation, and then you can actually kind of lead through the situation. So that's a great. I like the name it to tame it little tagline. It really sticks real well. But yeah, there's a lot of power in naming the emotions, even for other adults. It's not just kids, because when you're feeling the thing real intensely, sometimes it's your brain is hijacked, and so it is very helpful to kind of diffuse the situation by kind of calling it out. And again, don't just ask why or whatever, right? Actually kind of give some context to your inquiry, because then they don't have to like come up with this huge solution of an answer. They can kind of just say, yeah, it's that. So again, you're kind of leading with breadcrumbs a little bit there, but I've found that to
for
be very
sure.
helpful with my daughter and my wife.
Yeah, and
Because
what
it
you're saying,
demonstrates your understanding. It's empathy.
absolutely, and it's understanding, and you're right, it's demonstrating understanding. It's proving to them that you understand by saying it out loud. It's not just like I know he's upset. It's, oh, I'm telling you, I know that you're upset, and that's
Right.
huge.
Yeah. It
And just
affirms
helps
it.
them
So
feel heard. And I appreciate your comment about like, yeah, I'm not treating my wife like a child, because it's like parenting is really just how to like interact with humans that know basically nothing, and they're starting completely from scratch. And so it's really just how to interact with humans that don't know very much. And it's not that children are somehow lesser or something. It's just like, just how do you handle like people that are having a really hard time? What do you do? And sometimes adults have really hard times, and so parenting perfectly applies to those situations. And like I like to say, like child psychology is really just human psychology. Just understanding, like when you understand how humans work, it's a lot easier to understand how kids work. And what you should how you should handle difficult situations and big emotions.
For
Wait,
sure.
so you guys just don't tell them to calm down?
I used to.
I heard that works wonders, right?
And then I learned. Yeah.
Yeah, or with the
Uh,
toddlers, just stop crying. Just
Yeah.
stop,
Yeah, yeah.
stop
Just
screaming.
stop. Just stop being depressed. Why are you
Oh,
depressed?
why
Just
didn't I
stop being
think of
depressed.
that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Gee, I
yeah.
hadn't thought of that. On a serious note, so I did wanted to come back to maybe like consequences, right? So I'm in the same boat. I am not a fan of punishment. I think it's ineffective, and quite frankly, I have enough authority and presence that I don't need to use punishments to teach my daughter the right way of things. I mean, it's just I just don't need to. Like we said, I don't need a reminder of my rank, right? Like I am dad, always, and if I'm not living up to that and have to reminder of that, clearly I've missed something along the way, right? So I'm never punishing, but I am a big fan of discipleship, right? It is a constant kind of. I'm a big like the way I kind of teach this is like good leaders root out dysfunction as fast as humanly possible, right? When it's the smallest, tiniest problem. So it's just this little gentle tap, like, hey, we don't do that. Nope, don't do that because this will be the consequence, right? Like it's kind of like just gently. It's like a bowling alley with the bumpers up, right? We want to kind of be the bumpers for people to keep them like on the straight and narrow. And our children are no different, but it's obviously in the context of their age and maturity level, right? But with that, where is kind of your guidelines for parents on, I believe if it's like willful disobedience, if it's willful destruction of something that, actual kind of like sinful behaviors, those deserve consequences. But if it's more of like a teaching moment, that's all I do is like, hey, honey, look, maybe you didn't understand this. We don't do that because of this, this, and this. So I'm not mad. I just want you to understand moving forward, we're not going to do that anymore. Are we good? We clear? That's kind of my approach. But I'd love to hear kind of your take on maybe consequences, because I think at times it's absolutely warranted. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you disagree with that. So I'd love to hear what you think.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to, like, you're saying it's willful disobedience. I would just question whether we can, like, assume that. Like, can we jump to that
Okay,
conclusion?
my daughter hits a kid at school.
Right. And I mean, there are appropriate times to hit people in self-defense, right? Like, I need to learn more about the
Okay, I
situation.
mean, I ask about it, right? What happened? There's a teacher's note. No,
Sure.
she straight like they said something in it like, so I hit them. All right,
Yeah.
what do we do now?
Yeah. So clearly, yeah, I would say even when it's like clearly sinful, that's not okay. I still do want to really understand like what's happening because clearly something serious is going on, right? If my daughter feels the need to hit somebody, um, clearly they're missing some skills, right? Or there's some like really dysfunctional stuff happening, or she's like being driven to the point of like really being stressed. Like there are some underlying problems that do need to be addressed, right? And so is it that this kid has been pestering and pestering and pestering her and she just doesn't know what to do, and she's been telling the teacher and the teacher just doesn't listen, and like I don't know if giving consequences just solves that problem, right? There are underlying root causes that we need to get to. And maybe it's enough to say like, yeah, there are serious things that need to be dealt with. Don't hit the kid, like, and in she'll probably say like, yeah, I know I shouldn't have, but I was being driven insane, like, and so like, and not to say that there's always a perfectly valid explanation, but like oftentimes kids aren't just insane. They aren't just like making random things. Like they have a goal in mind that is perfectly reasonable, but the way they went about achieving that goal was not right. And so we don't, I think, um, just giving a consequence doesn't necessarily teach the kid what they should do instead next time. Be pretty confident they understand that they shouldn't be hitting people. Um, it really does come down, like, I don't need to give her extra motivation next time not to hit them. I think she really just needs guidance about what do I do in this really hard conversation, like really hard situation. And so I think she needs more guidance about what she should do instead of just extra motivation about why she shouldn't do that again. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from, is like really getting to the root cause, really figuring out what was going on. Why did you, like, what drove you to do that, and what can we do instead? Maybe it's as bad of a situation that, like, this kid is like clearly not changing, and the school clearly is not going to do anything about it. Maybe she needs to not be in that school. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's not her fault that she's in such a rough situation. And yeah, she made a poor choice, but like, what could she have done? Like, I just really would want to hear the whole story and really like help her through the situation and give her some really clear, really helpful guidance instead of just more extra motivation, which she probably just doesn't need.
Yeah, I hear you. And I always try to get all the context, right? Again, that's actually something I learned from the military very well. Of like, anytime you have to do, because there is actual punitive actions in the military, never leap to a conclusion. Always get every side of the story type of thing. So I've always tried to do that as a parent as well. So I'm with you there in terms of find it all out, get to the root cause, absolutely. And then we haven't slapped consequences on her. We've always asked her, what do you think the consequence should be? And I've talked to multiple child psychologists, and they think that's actually a really good strategy, because they kind of write their own sentence in a form there. But I'll leave you with this example, maybe just to devil's advocate here, okay? I did Taekwondo as a kid, highly competitive, like Junior Olympics and everything. And there was a time where I was just mad at a kid in the neighborhood, and I kind of beat the crap out of him. Like, I absolutely used my skills for evil, And so my parents were like, wow, I don't really know what to do with you here. So they went and told my master at Taekwondo, and I was stripped from a black belt to a white belt for an entire month. I'll tell you what, I've never used my powers for evil ever again. It was a very valuable lesson. I was like 12 at the time, I think. So, man, I kind of disagree. At some points, I think consequences are, I'm going to give you a painful lesson today so that it's not life-threatening in the future. You know what I mean? Like, because as an adult, if I strike someone publicly, I'm going to prison, right? And now there's a case because I'm actually trained in martial arts and I'm a veteran and all that kind of stuff. That's really not going to go well for me, right? So some of that stuff, I think, and we're obviously talking boys and girls here and everything, but for me, that was a pivotal. George needed to learn the hard way, and he's never messed it up again. So I just think there's, at times, consequences are absolutely necessary because it is that ultimate guardrail. It's like their last chance before it's truly an emergency, So I am with you, though. Find out all the facts, and you shouldn't just leap to, slapping on a consequence. But, I'll allow you to respond to that, and then I think Brandon has something for you.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think it's tough, especially if you were raised in a situation where there was, spanking or various kinds of physical punishment, or I don't know, even not punishment, just physical pain being inflicted on you. And so it's like, why is there this standard where adults can hurt children, but children can't hurt other children? And so I see it as like a double standard. Like, what is the kid supposed to think? Like, you're doing it to me. What do you mean I can't do it to someone else? So it's like, rules for thee, but not for me. I think parents need to clean up their act first before they inflict standards that they don't even follow themselves. So I think there's a fundamental hypocrisy there that I just think, if you're not using violence as a parent, your kids are going to be a lot less inclined in general to use violence against random kids in the neighborhood. And so also I would say there is some reason that you beat that kid up. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe.
Yeah, I was being an asshole. That's what it was. I knew I had the
I
power
know,
over him.
but
And so
there's
I abused my authority, essentially. Yeah.
right, but there's
I
a
just, people can be wrong, man. Like, I just,
sure, but there's also
consequence doesn't, let me be clear. I don't lay hands on my child ever. So, like, a consequence is you don't get TV for the week, right? Or there's no tablet or whatever, right? You are losing this privilege. You're not going to horse riding, right? You've lost the privilege to have benefits because you are shaming the family name, right, with poor behavior that you absolutely know better. Right? My daughter's a little older. It's not like a toddler here. So I'm just kind of failing to see how, like, I mean, there can just be bad behavior. It's not,
sure.
you know what I mean? It's not.
But like what I'm saying is, yeah, maybe you were just being a jerk, but there is still the conversation, like, why did you feel the need to be a jerk, and is it because you're being treated like a jerk constantly? Like, if we don't actually get to the root problem, we're just treating the symptoms. And so just constantly, or maybe not constantly, but just giving consequences to say, not that, is not helping us. Okay, when I feel these feelings, how do I handle them? Like, kids do need to be equipped with those tools, with those skills. And
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
especially if parents are modeling being a jerk to you, which, I mean, maybe they weren't, but from what you've said, maybe they were. Um, maybe maybe an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Maybe the consequences is a pound of cure, but maybe we should make sure we're treating each other in the home with kindness and with gentleness and never ever with violence. And then maybe
Yep.
kids would have a lot easier of a time. And so I think if you're finding yourself in a situation where you feel the need to use consequences, you, as a parent, you probably could have prepared your kid a lot better and for that challenge. And so maybe they just need more skills. I mean, if you are feeling really angry and you just beat someone up, you need to learn how to handle your anger, right? There's just like, you just do need to learn self control. And so motivation is not always necessarily the solution. We need, maybe it is, but oftentimes it's not. So extra motivation as a solution is kind of jumping to a conclusion, in my opinion, that is
Yeah.
not always warranted.
I guess I'm just not understanding where then they learn personal responsibility in this equation, right? Because if it's always like, oh, well, it was someone else, it was this and that. Okay, I understand why you did it now. It's, especially when it comes to things like physical violence or whatever, like that's a personal decision you made, whether you're 9 or 19 or 29. I mean, you chose to do that. Um, and there are consequences in life, and consequences are earned by you. It's an individual thing that you earn, right? So I'm just failing to see like where the personal responsibility is trained through this process, because the reality is if I just insulate them from everything, then they go out into the world and then act like that there's no such thing as consequences. They're going to learn it really, really hard, with like
Yeah, no, that's a great
financial and
point.
things like that.
And I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, my kids aren't quite as old as yours, I don't think. So no, that's good to think about it from that perspective. Yeah. So I would definitely say if it's getting to the, like, so of course I'm saying I'm trying to make sure it doesn't. I'm doing everything I can to make sure it doesn't get to the point
Right.
of
And
physical
I am too,
violence.
man. I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
dads need to own it. You own the outcomes for your family 100%. So
for
I'm
sure,
fully on board with that.
for
But
sure.
let's
But
say
yeah,
like you're
so
super dad and everything is flawless. Kids are still going to do the wrong thing. Like, that's just a
right.
truth, So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even then, I'm still looking in the mirror first. But yeah, what do I do with my kid? How do I, with physical violence? I would I mean, it's tricky. I mean, I would say there needs to be, so first of all, I would be modeling what does a good apology look like. I would be modeling what does good uh I'm blanking on the word, but making it right.
Amends.
making
Yeah.
amends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
making
Amends. Yeah.
amends.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that really look like? How do I really make it up to someone? And so if I do that their whole childhood, and then I say, okay, you really messed up here. You really hurt someone. The right thing for you to do is to take these steps, to apologize, to make amends, to show them proof that you're never going to do this again, because you owe them that much. You owe this guy that much. And so I'd have that conversation with him. I'd say, do you agree? Like, and if he says, yeah, okay, I think I do need to do these things. I need to take these steps. And I think if he does that, I don't see why we would need consequences if the kid is mature enough to take those steps. I mean, ideally, that would be, fantastic. Is every kid going to do that? Definitely not. It's definitely going to take some warming up to that and practice. Um, but yeah, yeah, certainly, there are some, I don't know, people call it natural consequences. Like if my kid keeps like dumping, he has his like cup of milk or something. If he keeps dumping it on the ground, I'm saying, okay, I'm not giving you any more milk right now. Like that is a perfectly reasonable, natural consequence. I'm not gonna let you keep doing this thing. Like if the kid, like, I don't know, if they're like a teenager and they keep speeding, it's like, okay, I'm not going to let you drive the car if you're going to be reckless, right? If the kid is like bopping his siblings with the little foam bat that we use for t-ball, I'm not gonna. Okay. I'm taking the bat away. Like, I'm not gonna let you hit
Yeah.
kids with the bat, right? So there's certain like common sense things like that, at least, that I you might call that a consequence. I would just call it kind of a natural consequence. So
Yeah.
certainly I would do that. I think that the violence is such a complex situation that I I don't know if I have the perfect answer about a consequence, but certainly if they were willing to apologize and make it right, I would be very, very proud proud as a father in that moment. And I don't know if I would, maybe if they were like, if there was something I could see that was causing it. If, like, okay, you got hopped up on, like, you had three Dr. Peppers, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna let you have a ton of Dr. Pepper and go beat some, like, I don't know, some crazy thing. But
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
All hopped up on Mountain Dew,
right,
jumping like a
right.
spider
Come at you
monkey.
like a spider monkey.
Well, no. So here's the thing: you guys are on the same page. You just lean more towards the preventative maintenance of getting to the point of a consequence, right? So you're leaving grace at the table. You're trying to get to that core root psychological reason of why somebody is acting out, and I get that. And then what George is doing is he's on the other side where he's setting that standard of this is the boundary, you don't cross it. If you do, there's consequences. And I think there's a great balance in between both of those. As long as you know how to approach both of those, you can balance it, and then you can approach your child with the right care and the grace that they deserve. Because
Yeah.
like
It
you
has
said
to
earlier.
scale to the situation. If you're
Sure,
laying your
sure.
hands on someone, it's serious. If it's
Yeah,
you
obviously.
forgot
And
to put your clothes away, okay, all right, well, go do it
right,
now. You
right. I
can't play
mean,
outside till you do that. Yeah.
but that's the good thing is like, with the maintenance thing. So a great example, daily rituals for my kids. One of the things that I do is I search for opportunities to ask them, okay, you have a choice to make here. If you make this choice, is it a good or a bad consequence? And if you make this choice, is it a good or a bad consequence that's going to happen, right? And what that does is it gets them into that critical thinking process of everything has a consequence, whether it's good or it's bad. Okay. And so I am the person who has the power to make it happen, good or bad. And sometimes my kids choose the bad and they get the natural consequence. Or if it's severe enough, they get my consequence, right? And that's okay. But again, it is getting to the root, having the finger on the pulse, and that's why being present and being intentional with your children is so crucial, is because then you already have that finger on the pulse. Then you know when they're acting out and when there's something underlying going wrong. Like with my daughter, she's very, very gentle. And so when she's crying, I know there's something that's really bothering her emotionally, right? Same with my son. He's very physical, so he's hurt himself or he's done something, right? So I think we can all agree there. But so okay, my question though, with all of this, with the consequences, with how to train it, is what are some daily habits or rituals that you've built into your fatherhood routine that keeps your kids grounded and connected, right? And keeps them to avoid these consequences.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, using the language, like I was saying, the name it to tame it,
Sure.
identifying, like, okay, what are you feeling? Kind of just being helping them be in tune with how they're feeling, and just not jumping to conclusions, like I've said, and just not taking it personally, um just modeling that self control, modeling it myself, staying present myself, and yeah, I guess it's a little abstract for me. I always prosper in the very specific situations, but
Sure.
generally just how do I make sure they're how that I'm setting them up for success as much as possible is, yeah, like I was saying, anticipating challenges as much
Yep.
as I can, preparing them for those challenges ahead of time, saying, okay, we're going to this, we're going to the birthday party, but the rule is you can't have tons of sugar. So what are we going to do, right? You can have one thing with sugar in it. Do you want it to be a soda or do you want it to be a cake? Talking them through it ahead of time,
Yeah.
kind of getting their tacit, buy-in and agreement with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that those are just a couple ideas that I go with.
Those are good ones. And one of the other ones I do, just to add to that, is transitioning. So my son has severe ADHD. And when we are about to transition to something else, if we just abruptly do it without warning him, gets very emotional.
Activities, not genders, just to be clear here.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Very, very clearly activities. Yes. So like
Moving from one thing to the next.
a great example.
His
Great
son is not
example.
transitioning.
No, definitely not. But a great example of this would be like we're at a party and we need to leave 10 minutes early because we have X, right? And so instead of just leaving and they're like all upset and emotional, it's like, hey guys, I know we're having great fun, but in 10 minutes, we're leaving. We got to go home or we got to do this. Daddy's got blah, 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 right? And that small little step right there just makes huge dividends in my child's ability to transfer because he's already mentally accepted and processed, okay, hey, I've got 10 minutes to hammer out some good play, and then we got to bail, right? And so those are the kind of things that I was just wanting to make sure other dads heard, is that there are daily rituals, sitting at the table, asking questions, doing things that teach critical thinking. All these things are wonderful. So obviously Dustin is on vacation. He had some really poor internet connection. But he did want me to ask you one question, so I'd love to ask it for him. And he would love to hear your opinion on the cry it out method with babies.
Yeah, for sure. It's honestly really tough, like going through that when your child is like screaming and you don't know what to do. You want this kid to like learn to put themselves to sleep. And so I'd say, and I'm no expert in babies, but my opinion, my non-expert opinion on sleep training would be probably for like the first 5 or 6 months of a baby's life on the outside. They should probably, you should probably err on the side of just not letting them cry it out. Like whenever they cry, just going and attending to them. They're probably just way too young for them to learn how to self-soothe. Their brain just isn't anywhere close to that yet. And so maybe when you're getting to 6, 7, 8 months, you can start maybe thinking about putting them in their own bedroom if they were sleeping in your room with you. And there's a specific sleep training method that we did that worked really well for us. It teaches kids to learn how to put themselves to sleep. And so basically what you would do is, you put your kid to bed, you're a baby that's like 7, 8 months old. And if they cry, you give them 5 minutes to kind of try to figure it out themselves. And after 5 minutes, you go in, you console them. They call it a pop in. You like for 30 seconds, you just console them. You say, hey, it's okay, daddy's here. You check if they've wet themselves or something or thrown up. And then you put them back to bed. You give them 10 minutes this time. And if they're still crying at the end of 10 minutes, you go back in. And so, and next time is 15 minutes, next time is 20 minutes. And so you're giving them more and more time to kind of console themselves. And so it's just teaching babies to start learning how to put themselves to sleep. Because if they don't learn how to sleep as a baby, they're going to struggle with sleeping their whole life. And sleep is just such an important thing to get right and to know how to do. And so anyways, that's kind of how I think about it. It's kind of more of a practical approach than kind of a moral thing. But I would just, as much as possible, try to be in tune and try to understand with what are the kind of developmental milestones the baby is going through. Is this a reasonable expectation at all? And is this baby even remotely capable of self-soothing? Or do I need and then figuring out kind of just sensing and figuring out the vibe of my particular baby. Are they, are they where a normal baby would be? Are they a little bit behind? Are they more advanced and more able to accept this earlier? Just really not doing whatever you can to not ask the impossible from them. And yeah, that's kind of what I think about that.
Fantastic.
All right. We're going to close with our standard question for all dads on the show. And it's, when people ask you, what's your favorite part about being a dad or those kinds of things, it's a memory, right? What's a core memory and experience you've had so far with your children? Just when people say, what's your favorite memory with your kids, that one just, boom, right off the top of your mind pops up. And tell us about that one.
Man, It's just like something about just babies laughing. It just like is just good for your soul.
Mm.
And just
It's just pure.
yeah, I just, throwing my son up in the air and just catching him and he's just like smiling. My daughter, she just turned 1. She's when she smiles so much, she literally throws her head back in a smile. Like it's not just like pure cheesing, like it's like yeah, like pure smile. And it's just like
It's like
anytime
a
you like
reverse headbang.
yes, exactly. And so just like anytime she's just so happy to see me that she's just like 100% pure joy. That's just like nothing warms my heart quite like that.
Oh yeah, man. Those are the moments. We'll treasure them because they go by fast. That's for sure. All right, tell us about this course. I know you just built like a course. I think you sell it on Gumroad, right? But it's tell us about that because I'm sure parents are listening to this and going, "Oh, maybe I need some education here." So we got the guy right here. He put it all together for you. So tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is for people who your kid's got he's exhibiting some kind of misbehavior. Maybe it's throwing tantrums, maybe he's biting or hitting or um, talking back, or he keeps popping out at his night when you're putting him to bed and you just don't know what to do. You're just stressed, you're overwhelmed. You've tried everything, you don't know where to go, you don't know who to talk to. Maybe you're like me and you don't really align philosophically with your parents and you just like I feel like I have no one to go to. If you just want kind of an understanding, like a whole bunch of very practical tools, a really like no fluff guide to, you know, what is like the peaceful approach to parenting. And then also in that package, it's, it includes one call with me. I'll just help break down your specific situation for you and give you all the practical advice that I think would be tailored to your exact situation. And then it's just 1 week of coaching to just ask me all the unlimited questions you want throughout the week that pop up just to make sure that it works for you. And so, yeah, if there's any parents out there that are just stressed and overwhelmed and just don't know what to do, you'd be a perfect candidate to check out this course.
Outstanding. So we will have the link for you in the description of this. You can go ahead and click it there and go straight to Luke's course. And yeah, man, with that, where you're most active on X, right? That's the best place for people to find you too.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can look up my name, Luke Adsit. My handle is at peaceful_tips.
Peaceful tips. Peaceful
That's
underscore
me.
tips. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Luke writes a lot of great stuff on X. That's a great way too for you to get some of these ideas flowing and self-reflect on where you can improve and grow as a parent. So Luke, love your content, love what you're doing, and thanks for the discussion and the back and forth here. I know I pressed you a few times, so thanks for sticking with us. And seriously, though, thank you for your willingness to kind of educate other parents because there's a lot of us who weren't raised with great upbringings, and so we need somewhere to go. And I'm glad you're putting out those positive tools for parents to kind of heal the generational traumas and curses, right? So it's good stuff, man. Any closing thoughts you got for the audience?
Yeah, I just really, really appreciate you guys having me on. This was really awesome, and I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about this and spread the word.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. All right, dads, let's peacefully go climb that mountain of fatherhood. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us, and if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.